it feels magical to be able to float through moves or across the wall, because what you're doing this thing, but you are at that moment, you may not be actively recognizing. You are so in tuned with your body and its communication that it is allowing it to happen. Check it out.
Hello everyone, I'm Alexa Forster, your host for the special LGBTQ takeover episodes for Sins and Suffers. Today, I am really excited to introduce this next episode where I had the pleasure talking to Kat Runner. Kat is a very, very skilled climber. He's an artist and photographer, he's an athlete, and he's also a trans man based out of Louisville, Kentucky. I was so grateful to have this conversation with Kat in person, face-to-face, while we were both attending the Flash Foxy Climbing Festival up in Bishop, California this last March. And just a quick side note, like I said, we recorded this out on location, so the conditions weren't, superior for recording a podcast, so there might be a little audio interference here and there, but please forgive us and enjoy the episode. Check it out. Okay, I'm gonna take a sip of water, and then we'll get started.
Important.
Very. Okay. Hi, I'm Alexa Forster, and welcome back to another episode of Sins and Suffers, the LGBTQ Takeover Edition. And right now, I am very fortunate to be out here in Bishop, California, attending the Flash Foxy Climbing Festival. And right now, I'm really excited to get to talk to Kat Runner. So, yeah. Hi, Kat. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty great. Yeah.
It's been good so far. It's been a wonderful festival. I've never been in a space like this before. And I've always wanted to create a space like this, and I think it's really special and really awesome that it exists.
100% agree with that. And I just want to back up really fast because I realized I forgot to introduce myself with my pronouns. So Alexa, she, her pronouns, and Kat, how about you?
My pronouns are he, him.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat. And yeah, talking about like the festival, I think this is my first experience attending a Flash Foxy event. And I just remember, I think it was last year, I saw them like do the process of like rebranding. I don't know, it was like last year or 2020, where they rebranded. And you were talking about that earlier.
Yeah,
Do you wanna...
I don't remember exactly when they did it, but Flash Foxy was previously known as the Women's Climbing Festival, and their last meetup was in 2019, and then the pandemic happened, and when they decided to come back, they wanted to rebrand because their demographic is changing, and they recognize that. They want to be inclusive of all non-dominant genders, so opening it up for a space where women can come, trans masculine people can come, trans feminine people, trans women, trans men, non-binary individuals, and just open up that space for people to come in and experience the climbing community and make connections, and especially and have access to some wonderful clinics and wonderful coaches and climbers and role models who they may not have access to like this.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's a really amazing thing that they've done. And I also really love the way they didn't just, lump, women and non-binary individuals into the same category, because that tends to happen a lot in a lot of like climbing spaces and events where a gym or whoever's going to do something and say they're inclusive and like, oh yeah, we're doing this event for, women and non-binary people,
Yeah.
or just like, kind of putting them in the same category. And whenever I saw Flash Foxy do it, they were very specific to talk about, it's for women and it's for people that, are of a gender minority, basically.
Yes.
And I just love that approach of just like not lumping, because my partner's non-binary, so I hear them constantly talking about all these issues for representation or including non-binary people with and just lumping them with cis women or just
Yeah.
like women in general.
Yeah.
So it's I love their approach, and it's just been really great to be here this weekend and like see like I'm taking Laura's falling uh clinic, and it's
Yeah.
amazing just getting to spend the day with all these other queer and or trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming people. It's
Yeah.
just been incredible.
That's something that we've seen a lot more in the climbing community, and specifically in gyms, as are trying to increase their diversity and their outreach and make it a more inclusive spaces. Yes, there are affinity groups forming, and the most common one was Women Crush Wednesday or some sort of Lady Crushers, and
Mm-hmm.
it's evolving to include non-binary people, but most often it feels like that's more tailored toward feminine non-binary people, because
Mm-hmm.
there are also non-binary is non-binary. It's
Exactly.
very expansive, very variant, and that can include people who are assigned male at birth.
Exactly.
And when and I think the intention in these spaces when they form these groups is often they want to not exclude non-binary people,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of the reason why these groups form is for cisgender women to have a space outside of a male or inside of a male dominated
Mm-hmm.
sport and a male dominated and a masculine dominated community. And what happens, and what I've talked with a lot of people about, is I've tried to figure out the best way to introduce and create um, some more inclusive groups at my climbing gym, is that what you run into if you have a women and if you call it women and non-binary, or it's for that, it still feels like it's tailored toward if you are
Yeah.
non-binary, you have to be presenting in a way that cisgender women are comfortable with,
Yeah.
and that's really kind of hard to navigate, and it's
Yeah.
can also be a problem.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that, or one of the reasons that why Flash Foxy's approach is so well is because they're actually talking to people in the community and they're bringing them on board to actually be in the conversation
Yeah.
to make sure that things are, being addressed appropriately. And I think that's kind of sometimes maybe where some of the gyms fall short, is they don't have anybody from that community
Hmm.
in the conversation. So yeah, I think it's great that you're doing, like you said, with your gym to try to bring in some more affinity groups and
Hmm.
everything. It's just amazing, and I'm inspired by everyone to try to like bring that home to Texas for me.
Yeah,
So it's
and
incredible.
there's always going to be that one person who's like, why do these need to exist?
Yeah.
And what's the because someone will always be pushing this, like, why are we segregating, why are we
Oh my gosh.
separating, when isn't the goal that we can all be together? And it's um yes, education is important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the I think, I can't remember, I was having a conversation with someone. It was more of like, I don't think that we should be splitting the groups up further. We should be really focusing on education and stopping and creating boundaries for the problems that exist in the community itself. And because otherwise they will follow into the group as well, and that can be true. But a lot of the reason why affinity groups exist, and the reason why, from my experience, like, it's so wonderful to um, come to a queer event or a trans related event, is that I'm going into that space knowing that there is a baseline of the education that I may have to that will be there. Like,
Yeah, like you know,
y-
showing up that you're gonna be safe, basically.
yeah, or that there's some level of education that everyone has. You may not have to be doing as much teaching. It's not as much emotional on you. Um, it's not as much of an emotional kind of impact on you. There's not as much emotional fatigue. You can just go in and climb. It does feel safer,
Yeah.
and it's can be a more welcoming atmosphere if you see that these groups exist. And especially like climbing can be really hard to get into.
Oh yeah.
It is very community. It has a very strong community, and I love the community, but it can still be hard and intimidating to come into that space. And if you have a group like this that exists in your gym, where here are people that are probably like-minded like me, here are people that are going to protect me, stand up for me. These are people that want me to be here. These are people that it can be much easier to come in and meet people and talk, and then you can meet the broader climbing community once you have that person with you or that group behind you, which is why it's so important for them to exist. It means you're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree 100%. That's such a great like response to, like why these affinity groups are so important. And like you said, like, you know, there's people like, oh, why do you want to segregate things? I thought you want things to be equal. And I run across that so much especially in like Facebook climbing group for like the Dallas area.
Yeah, and sometimes
there's so many like white, you know, cis het men who just respond to this message and they're just like, oh, well, you're just being racist. I'm like, they just don't understand because everything is like geared towards them basically. And like I had this similar experience, you know, like starting climbing, like for me, like I saw it as something that I would never ever do until like one day I was at my friend's after New Year's and she was like, hey, do you want to go climbing? And it was just, you know, one of my queer friends inviting me to go do something that I never would do. And since she has done it and like, you know, her partner got her, you know, her partner at the time got her into it, it's just like, okay, well, this seems like something that, you know, some queer friends that I know enjoy this sport and like talk about how queer it is. Like, yeah, I want to give it a shot. Yeah. Because it feels like a safe thing.
There's also a comfort and a connection when you're with people who have experienced. Oh, there goes the light.
Can you pause really fast because I don't want your car to die. I just realized
it's not on.
Okay,
it's just the light.
I was worried that would burn it out.
I think
basically.
it forgot. I think it's assuming that like I'm not in the car.
No, it's okay. And it's like you can leave it off because I don't want your battery to die.
It's
but you can pick it back up from
there. There's like a true comfort and connection when you are around other people with similar lived experiences as you, because you don't have to preface everything. You don't have to preface what you're going to talk about. They just like might know. Yeah. And that releases an emotional burden that you can feel when you just want to like talk about something and connect. It's like that feeling that you have with your best friend that you've known, and you can just start talking to them about something and they just know because they have the context and they're aware of it. And I think in infinity spaces, if you're with people who have experienced similar things to you, you can share your experiences there. It's a safer place. You can openly talk about it and you can create conversation. It can feel like a safer space to have a difficult conversation, to challenge opinion, because there is a level of respect and safety that is already instilled there.
Yeah. So well said. Just chef's kiss. Amazing. Yeah. So now I kind of want to just like slowly shift topics here. We're talking about Flash Foxy and how amazing this weekend's been so far. But now I kind of want to get more personal into kind of your history, Kat, and talking about climbing in general. And so yeah, just talk about like so how long have you been climbing and what got you into climbing? I'm curious.
I've climbed in a commercial setting. I started climbing in a commercial setting in a gym when I was, maybe I did it for sure in the 4th and 5th grade. And then I think before then we had this like rock wall at our mall and the sporting goods store that I'd go and we'd do every now and then. I really wanted to. It was, I was young enough to know that when I saw it and I wanted to do it and I was like, too small, they wouldn't necessarily, they told me, like, come back before we close. and I wore this like big sweatshirt to try and like puff it out, and just like I just wanted to go climb. But I've been climbing ever since I was young.
Yeah.
Ever since I was like a little child, I've had this affinity to climb. And then when I went into middle school, my priorities shifted, my focus shifted. I really wanted to do scholastic sports, so I played basketball, and then I later played field hockey, which is a sport that I didn't know existed, nor did I ever think that I would ever play. But I found a fun and enjoyment with that, just being on a team and enjoying that sport. And then um, going into high school, I didn't pursue sports. I didn't think I was going to be good enough to make the team. And then I had a growing injury that impeded my ability to run. And I was doing two very cardio intensive sports. And I just like
Yeah.
couldn't run and do it anymore. So I decided not to. Go to school, and then like high school was not a great place,
I
and
understand that.
yeah, the high school I just didn't have a great relationship with it. It was a pretty toxic environment for me. It was also at a time of adolescence where I was old enough to understand for the first time, like really understand kind of like stereotypes and pressure, and because I'm adopted, I'm a transracial adoptee. I'm Chinese, but I was raised by white parents with the proximity to whiteness, and so I look like I'm Chinese to everybody around me. I look like I'm Asian, but I wasn't necessarily raised in that culture,
Mm-hmm.
and but I'm still held to many of the stereotypes and the presumptions that the
Mm.
Asian community is held to. So, and a lot of that has to do with the media that I had growing up. So, if you were Asian, you were smart, you were good at math, you were good at science, you exceeded in school, you were going to be a doctor. All these
Yeah. All the
pressures on your
stereotypes.
future
Yeah.
that didn't align with what I enjoyed. I was much more in the English art kind of creative side. I can do math, but I wasn't particularly gifted at it. And I was going to a school where for the very first time I was around a large population of Asian people, and that was different. And now those stereotypes were just kind of compounding on me, in addition to the reputation that the school had, and then its environment of just like being prestigious and being highly academically gifted, and I just didn't feel like I fit in there. So that was not great. And then so and then on top of all that, I was going through like puberty and starting to have a gender crisis and didn't have the words for
Oh
it,
yeah, no
and
words.
didn't have any of the language,
I
and
understand that.
all of that. I eventually figured out what being trans meant, and I was like, that's it.
That's me.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's like I thought about it, and I listened to a bunch of people's stories, and I found myself within those, and then it's like this makes sense, and I'm comfortable with that, and I think I'd be more comfortable if I pursued um some aspects of transitioning, and so that was a big thing. Whew.
It's huge. It's a huge thing
Yeah,
to
it was
like.
a major.
It's
It's
so daunting to
you're
against that basically in your life, and it's just this huge turning point.
Yeah, and because it was also at a time when it we didn't have the visibility that we had today.
Yeah, I'm curious. Just if I don't mind
Um,
asking,
it was
what year?
in 20. Let's see, 2014.
Oh wow, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
way yeah,
It
like
was 2014. We had all of our, um, I guess our, trans forefathers. Just like, our YouTube, the people who came before us sharing their
yeah. So
stories on YouTube, but
beginning like trans YouTubers
you
basically.
had like, I mean, the hero in my story is Skylar Kurgel. And then like Alex Birdie was creating content, and then Benton Sorensen. Those were the three that I resonated the most with. And now you just think about like, wow, there's so cool.
There's so many.
But it was also at the time, and just like, and this is part of like representation. I found myself in the stories of some individuals, but when it came to trying to like educate and look into medical transitioning and what that would look like, there like hardly any Asian transmasculine people
Mm-hmm.
that you could and this was, I had not explored Instagram yet. It was only YouTube.
Well, yeah, because I feel like
Um,
2014, like you said, like I
yeah.
think Instagram just like maybe came out. I'm
Yeah.
probably just like probably off, but like I figured Instagram wasn't as powerful as a tool as it is today for the trans community.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just like YouTube was where it was, and it was also like you could visually connect with these people and you could
Mhm.
see it happening. And so like that's where all of my education happened. And figured things out. It's like, this makes sense. This is what I want. Like, and then came out to my mom, who I lived with and I still live with. And she was extremely supportive. My entire family has been extremely supportive. I'm very
That's awesome.
lucky. And it was just kind of amazing. And so we just like started going to a gender therapist, and then she found a conference that occurs out in San Francisco every year called the Gender Spectrum Conference. There's an adult track and a teen track, and with workshops, clinics about like, for on the adult track, it's a lot of like supporting your trans kid, like
Mm-hmm.
more info on medical transitioning, like listening to doctors and educated individuals, more educated them, and just like learning. And then for us on the teen, it was just one, you're probably, for a lot of people for the first time, especially for me, like this is the first time that I'm surrounded by a lot of trans people,
Yeah.
especially my age. There were some trans people in school, but that I was friends with, and who were the first people that I came out to, I believe, or like came out right after my mom came out to, right after I came out to my mom. But I was around other trans people,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like 6 months after coming out, and that's when, and I knew what I wanted, and like it was that conference and her being able to learn and specifically meet the parents of other trans kids, for her to understand why it's so important, why this is what I need to go through, and what her role in that would be. And she was finally ready
Mm-hmm.
to transition with me.
Yeah.
Because I had it's like I was gonna need her support. I was a minor. I was 16.
Yeah.
I was 16.
Like at that point, yeah, it's like
Um,
parents are so like make or break for trans youth.
Yeah, it is, and you can be unsure. You can still be supportive. You, as a parent, you want to protect them. That is your role as a
Mm-hmm.
parent. And it can be very, I think, hard navigating, like giving them enough space so that they can explore, but making sure they're safe enough to do it. But that is your role as a parent. Let them support your child and all of their exploration and all of their endeavors. Give them the space to do that, but know that you are there to catch them when they need you. And that is what both of my parents gave me, and were there is and they had, like, my mom, since she was the main kind of, I was going to need her the most, for just all of the legal logistics and everything.
Mm-hmm.
She was a little bit more hesitant, because I mean, what parent,
Yeah.
I think it's right and justified. Like, I think it makes sense if you're hesitant, because this is a major shift in your
Yeah.
child's life, and you want to make sure that they are going to be safe and protected. And
especially at this point in
Yeah.
time too, like you said, 2014, like
yeah,
there was hardly any
There wasn't-
representation,
there wasn't
and
like
then the
any
education's not. I mean,
information.
it's still not great today, but it's leaps and bounds
Yeah.
from where we were in 2014.
Yeah.
So I'm just so like, I love hearing stories like this from whenever you have like supportive parents for a trans like kid. It's
hmm
just like, it's
it
so,
really changes things, and it
yeah,
means the world, and for many people it means their life.
yeah,
It means their life, it means their future, it means their future with you. And it's devastatingly sad that there's some parents out there who expect only one future, and if they cannot receive that, they will not
yeah,
support any other future, and that's really sad. And but yeah, like, came home from that and got the ball rolling, and by the end of the year, I had my first shot of tea, and I had my date for top surgery, and then that's kind of, yeah. And I tried to play sports in school. I transferred schools in between doing all of this. So,
mm-hmm.
um, and when I transferred schools, I went into the new school as stealth. So I was going in identifying as a boy and a man, and that's what everyone would know me as. And I came out and started openly identifying as trans later.
Yeah.
Um,
Just a moment. I just want to like let people know, because a lot of the audience is more cisgender people.
yes.
So like, just give me a quick example what stealth would be, so people who
So
aren't familiar.
stealth is the antonym of open, essentially. So if you're stealth, it means that you are usually disclosing your trans identity on a case by case basis, sometimes not at all. And for me, it meant when I was going into school, I was going to only like the people who needed to know. So the um, principal and the counselor
Yeah.
knew that I was trans, and everyone else, I was just going in as a boy, and here's my new name, and
Yeah.
that's what they would come to know me as, and they wouldn't know of that I was trans or of my previous gender or anything like that. It
Yeah.
was coming in as a new identity,
Yeah.
and maintaining that identity and disclosing any previous identity if I felt comfortable and if I wanted
Yeah.
to.
And that's like, sadly, I feel like that's the way it should be for everyone who's trans, but unfortunately that's not the case, sadly.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, thanks for like going through all that history with me about
Oh my god.
your past. Like,
It just,
that's
yeah.
it's so amazing to hear like stories like this, as opposed to so many other like trans youth stories that aren't as fortunate.
But
So it's just, it's a joy to hear these like happy stories.
yeah. But climbing, this is a climbing podcast.
Yes. No, it's totally fine.
Get back to the
It's
climbing.
totally fine. No, this is a part
Um,
of your history, and I asked the question about like what got you into climbing. So it sounds like you started climbing like pre-transition, and then I'm curious, like, how long did it like take you to get back into climbing? Or
Yeah.
was it just right there immediately for you?
And so after I transferred schools, that fall or that winter, I was still like, I knew my top surgery was coming. I'm like, I want to do sports again. I have the time. I don't necessarily have this growing pain anymore. And I don't want to do basketball because that would overlap with right around my top surgery, and that wouldn't be good. But I want to bowl. We have a bowling team. And so I went out for the boys' team, and we were a small enough school that if you wanted to play, you played.
Yeah.
And was then told that after the first practice that I cannot play because of my the gender marker on my birth certificate at the time didn't match
Oh my gosh.
the team that I was on. Kentucky has discriminatory policies. And they have not changed since I was in school.
Yeah. And if anything, they're getting worse.
Yes, that is, yeah.
As of right now, and this.
It's going to Bashir's desk, and he will probably veto it, but the Senate will override it. I can almost guarantee.
Yeah.
same thing would just happen in Utah.
Yeah.
So, I just decided, okay, I'm not gonna play sports. I'm not gonna play sports now. I'm gonna do this top surgery thing. I'm gonna heal from it. I'm gonna fight tooth and nail to get special permission senior year, because by that time, of the requirements listed under the policy, I will be eligible to play, minus the fact that I will not have had a hysterectomy, ovarectomy, or bottom surgery, which is required under the Kentucky policy.
Cool.
Yep, very accessible for a
Oh
minor.
gosh.
So I did this. We had this like underground lifting society thing, which means after school on some days you would go fuck around in the gym, lift weights, do whatever. I did that for a year, and I ended up doing it my senior year too. I got permission to play, but by the time I got permission, like I had too many conflicts. It was my senior year, and I didn't have the time for it, which sucked. So, and that was I graduated in 2016. In 2015, a new climbing gym opened downtown. The gym that I had been going to previously was out, like it's technically, I think, closer to my house, but it's also just in terms of the traffic and the nature to get there, it's further away.
Yeah.
And it's climbing. It holds a place in my heart. This is my first climbing gym. It's where I learned to climb in a commercial setting. It's where I learned to climb on plastic. It was not great.
Yeah.
And it was mainly a ropes gym. They did build a bouldering section, but the beginning, if you want a boulder, you start on overhang. That's what the bouldering section is.
Oh my gosh.
And but by then in 2015, a new gym opened downtown. Bouldering only gym. You didn't have to rely on a partner to go climb. It could just be you. And someone that I went to school with, we were actually going to do CrossFit, and the gym never emailed us back when we emailed the questions. We learned that she had a climbing background as well, and we probably literally just missed each other in terms of our climbing as a youth. And we was like, let's go to the gym. And that's where the story ends, and it's or that's where the story begins, and it hasn't ended yet.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was kind of amazing to go back into a gym and really fall in love with the movement again. And like, I don't think I ever didn't like climbing. Through much of middle school, like, go to the park, monkey bars, climb on all the shit. But it was, climbing in a climbing gym setting, I hadn't experienced that in like 7 years. And bouldering was so different. It was so fun. It was something that I could do on my own. I didn't have to rely on my parents anymore. I didn't have to rely on other people to be there. I could go and do this thing for myself.
Yeah.
So it was a lot more accessible in that sense. And it was, what I've noticed now and learned is that I was still, a baby in my identity then. And I'm still kind of like, your identity will grow and evolve as you do. It's never, it'll never stop. And if it stops, then I think you're not challenging yourself enough.
Yep.
But
100% agree with that.
it was, I was a year on testosterone. The majority of like significant changes had happened by then. My voice had dropped, and I didn't really get misgendered much even before. I just looked a very prepubescent boy, but now I was like, if it didn't really happen.
Yeah.
And I was coming into this new setting in this community open as who I was, and climbing was kind of like a vehicle to explore this new identity in this new space as like a human. And they morphed and learned and grew together. So my identity as a trans person, my identity as a climber is like, this is where I learned how to take up space, how to move through the world, sort of who I was, how people saw me, how people perceived me. And it was, in addition to just being like fun and it's kind of hard to remember that long ago. I can say for now, for sure, it's like based on where I was, like, I didn't recognize it then. I was not happy. I didn't really see a future. And it was just, I was existing, but I wasn't a participant in my life.
And you're talking about this was like right as you started climbing again, or was it
Just
prior?
like both, all like prior at the very beginning of climbing, just kind of um transition wise and growth, but especially like pre-transition, it was
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of things going on, and I wasn't happy for a very long time, and I found climbing was something that I was able to find joy in.
Yeah.
And it's the one type of movement and athletic activity that is very intuitive to me, and it was just amazing getting on a wall, feeling the movement, and um, finding a connection that had not existed for a very long
Yeah. That's amazing. That's oh, that's so
time.
great. I love just hearing all these different stories from different people and different experiences and how they've, got into climbing basically. And it's just I always just enjoy hearing all these different perspectives. So thank you. Um, so now I want to kind of go into more climbing today. And so it sounds like I'm just curious, I'm always curious what people enjoy more. So it sounds like you enjoy bouldering more, or
I
would you consider yourself like to fall to one side, or is it just like you love all of it?
I specialize in bouldering and sport climbing. I am slowly creeping into trad. I've gotten to the point where I see a crack and I'm like, ooh, interested. Probably can't
Hmm.
like climb it well, but
Yeah.
interested. The interest, like I didn't used to look at cracks and be like, oh, I might want to touch that. Now it's like, oh, I kind of want to touch that.
Yeah.
And so like creeping into that, creeping into multi pitch, but primarily focused in bouldering and sport. I live in Kentucky. I'm about 2 hours from the red, so that's mainly sport. There's a little bit of bouldering there,
Yeah.
but and then I climb in a bouldering gym, so it they balance each other out pretty well.
I know.
Like
Yeah, of course.
the power, and then you just have to be out in the red for like a couple weekends in a row, and then endurance starts to build by the time the season comes along, and I do have a tendency to be more interested and choose bouldery projects,
Mm-hmm.
or more bouldery sport routes because they're more fun with for me. The thing that I love the most about climbing is the movement and finding a flow state, especially, but
100%.
finding problem solving sequences or making links and getting to the point where um, getting them so dialed that I can efficiently execute them. It's not fun for me to get pumped off of like a 100-foot V2 climb. I want to fall off hard moves. So
Yeah.
it's like a weird little combo, but I tend to do the more I come from a bouldering background, so I do the
Yeah,
more
so you
bouldery
want to do,
sport
yeah, that
routes.
makes sense. And like you said, like about how they kind of balance each other out. Like
Yeah.
I go to a gym and I try to keep a nice balance of like bouldering and like, top rope or lead climbing basically, or sport climbing, however
Yeah.
you want to say it. Um, and I find that, they're so important and complement each other to
Yeah.
just stick to doing one thing because, for sport, you definitely need that power you get from bouldering
Hmm.
to make it through that route. But then if I'm like not feeling like climbing, a sport that day, I was like, okay, I can do top rope just to build that
Yeah.
endurance
Yes.
basically
One
is
of
so important.
I love it when most people in the red or who grew up in the red or spend time there, sport climbers, and don't necessarily focus or climb as hard in bouldering. It's just they don't get psyched on it, and that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then if they do start going on trips or they start um, increase their accessibility to boulders and start bouldering, they notice a shift in their climbing because I from my experience, power is much harder to build than endurance. Endurance, like having really good endurance where you can last forever, that's really hard to build. I
Yeah.
don't have that. That's a lot of technique, but
Mm-hmm.
you can build it and get in shape enough that you can last on your project probably okay.
Yeah.
Power, on the other hand, it's just like it's really hard to build and train and find that technique, and so it's really if you're I bouldering has, like, you don't have to love bouldering, but it's if you're not doing it, and um I think it could really complement and help your climbing a little bit. You don't have to do it all the time, but
Yeah.
just like
No.
a little
No.
bit of bouldering, and you'll probably notice a shift in your climbing.
Yeah. 100% agree. Yes, and it reminds me that I have been so wrapped up in rope climbing recently that I need to get back into doing more bouldering stuff.
Ropes are
So
fun. Climb what
yeah.
you're psyched on, but don't
Yeah.
forget the other
Exactly.
thing. It's
Don't
kind
forget
of
the other
that.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget the other
Exactly.
thing, but climb what you're psyched, follow the psych, because you need the psych to send.
Yeah, and it's like it's the baseline. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, it's hard to
So
climb. It's hard to do difficult moves or just like anything difficult if you're not into it and if you're
yeah.
not having fun.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
and I think one of the reasons I kind of like basically the one injury I've had climbing was from bouldering. So
yeah.
and it's and to
Sport
my,
climbing
in
can be a
my-
lot nicer to
yeah,
your body.
It can be a lot nicer because you don't. I mean, if you're sporting outside, then it's a little different, and then it gets a little more dangerous for your falls for sure.
Mhm.
But for bouldering, it's definitely I'm always a lot more cautious.
It's a lot. It can be a lot
when
more
I'm
dynamic.
bouldering, just because I don't want to hurt myself again and
Mhm.
be out from climbing for a few months because
Yeah.
like I use climbing to like help. It's part of like a therapy for me almost.
Yeah.
To like help me just like get through a hard day or something.
Mhm.
If like I'm going through things, like climbing's there for me, like to go clear my head basically.
Yeah.
Like I've heard other people on this podcast and I'm asking them, basically like I was like I'm like one of the things like why I love climbing so much is because like it allows me to, just clear my head
Mhm.
and just be focused and in the moment where it's just me and the wall and like
Mhm.
me and these holds basically
Mhm.
and allows me to get everything all the other shit out of my head that's just like really
It's that flow state.
it's that flow state like
It's
you're
that flow
saying
state.
it's that flow state and some people have compared it to like meditation
It
almost
is.
and it's so incredible
And it's yeah, it's you just it feels magical to be able to float through moves or across the wall, because what you're doing this thing, but you are at that moment, you may not be actively recognizing you are so in tuned with your body and its communication that it is allowing it to happen. Things are happening intuitively. You are giving yourself to your intuitions, to your natural movement. You may also be trying very hard, but it's just like it's for you're just there's a moment of peace
mm-hmm
as you're doing it. They're not combating each other, and they're just working as one. And that's a really magical feeling when you've spent so long feeling like they're just like knocking heads and just like hating each other all the time.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that approach, but like as a trans person, yeah, that's such a crazy thing for your mind and body to be like at one and at peace. That's
Yeah.
such wow.
They're
Thanks
just
for
working
that.
together.
They're working together.
They're
for once,
working
and they're
together
not-
finally.
They're finally working together. Oh my gosh, it's happening. Nature's healing itself, y'all. That doesn't apply there.
You
But,
may be trying hard, you may be doing
yeah.
hard moves, but it's doing what you're telling it to do.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
It's not fighting back.
So I'm curious, what keeps you, what keeps you coming back to climbing today?
I love the movement. And my biggest shift is like I like pushing hard and I like doing hard moves, but what's more important to me is the community that I've built and the community that I've found and the people I've found within the community. Climbing is fun. Like the movement's great, but
Mm-hmm.
it is significantly more fun if you're out with people that you enjoy and people who
Yes.
support you and uplift you, and you climb better if you're with people who uplift you.
100%.
And so that's like, and I've been just like grateful enough to be able to find that, be able to find some really solid, genuine partners, people who make it enjoyable. And because I've had my fair share of injuries. I've got a pretty large finger. It's not great. Um, and there's been months at a time, weeks at a time that I've been out of climbing, and it was really hard. And that is one of something that I'm like very cautious about now when I climb. I'm a lot more of a hesitant climber and probably more considerate climber too. But like before the in terms of my new mood and my approach to climbing, and like I used to climb before my shift at the gym, and that'd be in the middle of the day. There wouldn't be anyone in there, and it was fine. I was still climbing, but it was it's different. You know, you're climbing alone. I think you can it's a lot more isolated. You can get really stuck in your head. You can get really stuck in your ego,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not as much fun because you're not just like you don't have someone there to just like try things with. And then I got hurt and I wasn't going to the gym, and I was just like disconnected from my friends and my community. And that's when I learned I can go to the gym and not climb. I can go to the gym and hang out and talk and
Yeah.
see people. And I started doing that, and I've been a much happier person since. It's like you can go, and I climb with them, but it's like I can go to the gym and not climb. I can go into the gym, I can sit on with my approach shoes, tennis shoes, whatever. I can sit on the mat with them. I can work beta with them. I don't have to touch the wall
Yeah.
because it's the people that I want to be around.
100%. Yeah. Like that's the other side of climbing. Like everyone's like, oh, it's this for me. It's like this such a relaxing meditative process. But the other part of it is like you said, community
Mm-hmm.
is like such an important thing, and that's like kind of like what I feel like this weekend. Like it's a
Mm-hmm.
weekend about climbing, but mainly it's community that
Yeah,
has brought everyone here to Flash Foxy,
absolutely.
and I
Yeah.
just think it's like the climbing community is like has its flaws for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but like
It's a subsector of human society. It's yeah, it'll always have it's like there's no discrimination, there's no racism in the climbing community. It's like look, we're humans. We are this other part. We're humans. It's another little like sub bubble of the
yeah,
human condition of the human experience. There are its problems. They may not be you may not feel like they're as grand compared to other environments, but they are there.
yeah. Just want to pause it there really fast and just say we hit our time. I didn't want the timer to go off like in the middle of you
Okay.
saying something,
Yeah.
but I was saying if you wanted to just like have something to wrap it up really fast
Oh.
because I wanted to be considerate.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we just keep on because it's a
Yeah.
conversation. We just keep going, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. But I'm just trying to think a good way because I want to talk about what you're talking about, human conditioned, all of that, but it still doesn't excuse a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that's wrong
Yes.
within the climbing community. Like,
Yes.
yes, we've come a long way, but there's still a lot of work to be done
Yes.
in
And
the
I
community.
think that's what's so important and what can be very uncomfortable for people is like myself. And we've talked about it here at Flash Foxy is like you need to get comfortable with knowing that you have things to unlearn. You may not even be aware of the things that you need to unlearn or the things that you don't know. You are unaware of the things you don't know. And I um it is I think beneficial to anyone to be an advocate for their own education. It's there. People are screaming out. Like I know the trans community. I put out a lot of information, and it doesn't make it out very much. And there are a lot of other people who are putting out information too. And even though those voices are yelling, if you aren't actively seeking out, aren't actively asking questions, aren't um including those communities in your daily life, you're never gonna experience them. You're never going to find them because they aren't going to, they're, putting themselves out there. But unless if you're going to sit down and watch the thing, or you're going to read the thing, or listen to the thing, or listen to the people talk, it's never going to reach you.
Yeah.
If you're not going to be open to it, then you'll be closed forever. Like, and it can be very uncomfortable and very vulnerable to feel like you don't know it all, because it does feel like, oh, everything I know is wrong, or I'm a bad person because I fucked up. And that's not true. It's, if you mess up, or I personally don't believe that people are inherently bad people. I think it's, habits and patterns, and that's what creates
Conditioned. Yeah.
and conditions, and like what creates a less than good person. But it's very hard to be vulnerable, and it's very uncomfortable to be vulnerable. And it's but that is something that we have to do as humans if we want to be open to becoming better. Because most likely the stories that we will listen to are gonna change or challenge something that we think we know. And we need to be careful about our defenses, because the moment the defenses go up and we think that we feel like we are being attacked, we will not hear a word that is said.
Yep.
We will be closed off. And then it becomes a yelling war between both sides, who are not listening at all to each other, what anyone has to say, and nothing gets done that way. So it's a very, and like, you don't have to be vulnerable all the time.
Yeah, because that can be exhausting. Basically,
it's exhausting.
You gotta take breaks, basically.
But hopefully, do it more than not.
Yeah.
Hopefully, be open and search for their stories and listen to people, and then also amplify the voices of people who are telling you. Because so much of, especially with social media now, we have circles. We have a circle of information that we receive, and then the people within our circle, they see what we see. And it can be very harmful, but it can also be very good, because my circle may be a bunch of trans people all spewing the same thing. And so I'm going to spew something because I think it's important. And then my hope is that someone in my circle who may not be trans sees that and says, oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And wants to share it with their circle. And that's how information gets spread.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's how education happens.
Yeah. 100%. It's just, but just hoping that, something that you share reaches, someone else in your friend circle that's, not trans, because if they're not in that community, then they're never going to know what's happening.
Yeah.
And like what legislation's going up against trans people, because it doesn't affect them. And if it doesn't affect you, you stay in the dark about it. You stay completely unknown about it until you run across someone who actually is affected by it. And it comes down to is like, are you going to, stand up and like support, your fellow human beings and like supporting them for basic rights? Or are you going to, sit there and just like not, like you said, it all comes down to being uncomfortable and putting yourself in that situation.
And that's for all marginalized and minority communities. Like, I have much more work to do in learning about the Black and especially the Indigenous community. And that is something that I'm actively trying to do. It's, and I think in terms of like showing up, like, everyone shows up differently, and what's hard about social media is we tend to see one specific side of a person or one persona of a person. We absolutely do not know what's going on in the background or what they may be doing on their own time, and then we can create judgments if they're not saying something. I've certainly created judgments about like oh my God, I'm putting all this stuff out and my closest friends aren't like doing anything from my community. And it's just like,
Yeah.
and we've had conversations and now it's like, I've seen the shift in their lives where they have started sharing it. And that really means a lot to me. But I think what's so important in terms of any sort of, I don't even want to call it activism, just like information sharing, education, is to show up the way that you can, the best that you can today.
Yeah.
If that means, if you're not comfortable with calling people or calling senators on the phone, you don't have to. You can do it a different way. You can share information. You can specifically bring it up if you're comfortable enough with your close friends and family, because that's where the most change will happen.
Yeah. Locally.
If you are financially able to and are more, you can contribute to organizations that are on the ground doing the work. If you're not comfortable being on the ground doing the work, you can support the organizations that are. There are so many different ways, and there's no one specific way or one right way to support change. It's showing up, just showing up the way that you can and the best that you can. You don't have to show up your best every day. You don't have to show up every day at all. You just need to show up at some point. And hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. And it's not like they talk about oppression Olympics and stuff. It's they're show up for as many communities as you can today in the way that you can. Like, I know and spew a lot about the trans community because that's my community.
Yeah.
Those are the resources I know. That's what I'm going to talk about, and that's what I'm going to share my story with. And that's how I show up for the trans community and my visibility. But I'm also going to show up for the Black and Indigenous community by educating myself so that I can be more informed, and then also financially support them because I'm able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm going to support those communities. I'm not going to create my own and talk from like my own experiences about the Black or Indigenous community because I don't belong to those communities.
Yeah. I just love, exactly. Just like showing up.
Yeah.
It's like what it's all about. And like, however you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's like the most important thing. So thank you for getting that across to everybody here who's listening. And yeah, just like to wrap it up, is there anything that we didn't get to talk about that you would want to like maybe share or plug anything that you're working on or anything like that?
I don't know. I think I think it's all good. I'm working on a bunch of stuff, but it's still like up in the mind goo. So there's nothing really to present quite yet.
Understandable. Yes, I understand that. I hate when that stuff that happens. But I am excited for you and can't wait for you to be able to share those things that you're working on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think it's gonna be cool. I wanna help connect more of the trans community back to movement and fitness if they want to pursue fitness, but specifically movement, because that's something that happens like when you go through just like gender identity exploration or anything like that. You may not feel like sports are accessible to you, and then now as an adult you may be interested, but it may be intimidating to get into that. So I'm working on helping bridge that connection, because movement's very important to me, climbing's very important to me, and it's helped me learn and grow as a person. And I wish that everyone, regardless of your gender, regardless of if you're trans, could experience it.
Yeah, 100%. I totally identify with so many things you just said about like how much climbing has like helped me in my life as a person and just like growth in general. And I could just go on here all night talking about this stuff with you. But yes, thank you so much, Kat,
thank you for having me.
Of course, yeah. I'm so glad I finally get to meet you and have this conversation.
I'm excited to meet you. I've heard great things about you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much, Kat, and thanks everyone for listening. And have a good one. That does it for today's episode. thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed, please go leave a comment. Let me know what you enjoyed about today's episode and what you found special. And then be sure to go like, follow, subscribe, and share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your chosen family. And like I said, thank you so much for being here today and listening to the episode. And if you're not really suffering, are you really sending it all?
Audio.